I'm Susan, and today I have a very special video for you. I am doing a collaboration with one of my favorite clay artists, Clay Zoo. He has created these amazing gemstones, and each one of these gemstones is actually the gemstone that he creates in his videos. So I will show you at the beginning, before I do anything with this gemstone, which one it is right from the start, so you can learn how to create this and see what I create with it along the way. So let's get started. So this is the cabochon that ZooPyo sent me, and I have to show you, it's exactly the one out of the video. You can see right there where it is the exact same one. So I wanted to show that to you so you could see actually how he begins to make it and how I finish it, which I think would be a much more interesting process. So I will link this video below so that you can see how he starts and makes this cabochon, and I will show you how I finish it. And as you can see, this is the exact gemstone that he created. He sent to me, so I'm starting out with some black clay on a number 3 on the pasta machine, just a thinner setting, and I have some of this metallic gold paint. Any gold paint will do. You could use a paintbrush with this, but I'm more with my fingers than anything. And I'll just give this a couple coats so it's a nice bright gold that I can use for my bezel. So I'll let this dry, give it another coat, let it dry, and give it another coat. Usually takes about 2 or 3 coats to get it nice and lustery. Now I've trimmed off this edge so it's nice and clean, and I'm going to create a little strip. I'm doing it about 3/8 of an inch. Whatever size suits you, do that. If you have a larger stone, sometimes you want a larger bezel. Smaller stone, smaller bezel, like I said, whatever suits you. And I just like to make a couple strips so that I have one for each of my stones. I have this rubber stamp. I'm just spraying it with water just as a resist. You can use powders, but I always find water to be easier. I'm doing what I call the kitty cat method. I'm just pressing the stamp into the clay. For me, this is the easiest way. You can roll it if it's easier. You can see I got a perfect impression with it that time. Now I just like to let it relax on top of another piece of paper. It'll absorb the water, and when it's dry, then I can add my gold. And now I'm just going to take a little bit of my gold paint and just highlight over the stamped clay. I'm using a little bit of Bacon Bond or any liquid clay because this is a pre-baked piece of clay. It will not adhere to the wet clay. I only need a small amount to make this stick. And I'm just going to put it right in the center here. And for my other stone, I have another piece of clay, and I want this one to go sideways. I like the way the stone moves that way. And so I'm just going to put it in there. But because I'm putting a bezel, I am just going to sweep a little bit of clay around all of these edges because I am no longer going on polymer clay. These have a resin coating, and I want the polymer clay to stick to the resin. And now I'll take that little strip I had of gold clay and just create a bezel. Now, I prefer to cut the clay over the clay. The clay overlap another piece of clay and cut both pieces of clay in the same spot. And that will give me an exact matchup. So I take that other little piece of clay out of the back, and now I'll just cut around it. just giving this another coat of liquid Sculpey or Bacon Bond on the back. Any liquid clay will do, because I've already baked this piece so it's nice and sturdy. And now I just want to back it. I just like to take my finger and blend the clay in the back so that it becomes one solid seamless piece. I just like to paint the edge a little bit with gold so it makes it all blend together. Then I will rebake this on a piece of t-shirt so that I don't spoil the back with any shiny spots. And here I have my mounted gemstones, and from here on I'm just going to bead these because this video would probably be 4 hours long otherwise, and I'll just come back and show you the finished product. And here is that beautiful coral and turquoise stone, and you can see how different it looks with a setting and some accompanying polymer clay beads. And here's a close-up of the stone. I love the contrast of the resin covered stone with the matte paint and the matte clay. I think it makes a really interesting contrast, and I also created these polymer clay beads to match the stone, because if you don't have something to match, you can always create your own. And here's that beautiful blue and green stone that he sent me, and I have set it off with some check glass fringe and some polymer clay beads and crystals to just highlight it. And here's a close-up version of this blue necklace. I wanted you to see all the beadwork involved and how different this came out than the other piece. And I've used some check glass beads for fringe because I just thought they were such an interesting complement to his stone, with some crystals for the fringe. And then I used some polymer clay beads with crystals as part of the necklace. To speed this process up, because it would be boring as heck to watch this twice, I'm going to do this beaded technique of beading around a cabochon with both of these. So I'll just show you one, and then I'll show you how I finish the other one. Like, I have some stiff felt. You can use lacy stiff stuff, anything you like interfacing, anything that's got some good rigidity to it. I have E6000, and I have just taken a Sakura gel pen and made these lines. You do not need to do this. I find that I get lopsided pendants if I don't do this. It just makes sure that everything is the way I want it, and if that I want to put a larger piece here going down, I usually have a better chance of keeping it even. And I'm just going to glue this down. Now I've decided that I want to make a smaller pendant, so I'm just going to cut this around. And I usually try to round off the corners on all of my pieces, and if you wonder why, it's because the corners have a tendency to catch your thread. I have some Nymo thread size B. I'm going to use this orangey red color so that you can see it. Normally I would have used a matching color to my beads, and I'm going to go up through and make a locking stitch. And to make a bezel around this, I am just going to take my size 11 seed beads, and I'm going to take 4 of them. And I'm going to go right down next to that cabochon, put my needle in at the end of where those beads lay, and then come up in the middle, which would be in between 2 of the beads. And now I'm going to go through those last 2 beads and continue all around the cabochon. Now when you come to the end, go back through the first bead that you put in, and then go back up through the middle. Just makes it fit in easier. And instead of going through 2 beads, I'm going to go through the first bead in the middle, and now I'm going to add a bead and skip a bead. So right here, I'm going to skip this bead, and I've added one of the beads onto my needle. And you'll see once I go through the following bead, see how it pops up right there? I'm going to continue around this, adding 1 bead and skipping a bead. So it's called peyote, and this will come up and around our cabochon. Now that I've got around that one time, I'm going to go through the top bead, the first one that I added, and I'm going to add a bead in between each of these top beads. And this will start to zip this up together. Now, as you're pulling this up, it does not come up around the cabochon till you get a little further down. It'll just lay on the side there, but once you start to get it up, these beads will move up and around your cabochon. I'm taking size 15 seed beads in a matching green and going in between the beads that are standing up. So I'm skipping the bead that's down, adding the bead that's in between. Now here you can see where I've added all those tiny little seed beads. Those are the size 15s. And when I say they're tiny, these are literally the size of a poppy seed. So the camera is struggling. And you can see on this side where I don't have them in, I will continue to add them all the way around to the beginning. So I've got all of the little beads down, the size 15s, and I'm going to go back through the first 15, the second, and so on. I'm just going to weave these 15s all through together. Now you will see a little of my thread. I don't mind because the thread actually matches the bead a little. And I will just continue to go through here, and this will tighten everything up. Now I could have continued to add beads, but my problem is I will have more beads around this than I will the cabochon, and I really want to show off the cabochon. Now, normally if I used thread, like I said, I would match the beads. If I find this orange to be too harsh, I'll just take a red Sharpie marker and make it red. But it's easier for you to see, and that's more important to me than if I have it exactly matching. And now I've pulled everything through, and I've pulled it tight. You can see close up how I've gone through all these little tiny beads out and how it's created this beautiful bezel that will hold this cabochon in nice and tight. Now the fun is to decorate around it with a little bead embroidery. So I'm just going to go back down through. Now for some contrast with all of these colors, I really feel I need some black. And unfortunately, it's going to be difficult for you guys to see the black because of the black felt that I have, but this is kind of a contemporary piece and I really need to work with the colors in it. And so this time I'm sort of stuck, and I'm sorry guys, but I'm going to take 2 of these 2mm black onyx beads, And I'm going to embroider around this bead the exact same way I put the green ones in. So I'm going to put 2 in, go down at the end, and come up through the middle and connect them. Now you can see the thread there in the middle. Don't worry about it, because once I pull this through, it will tighten up and you won't even see it. And if you did see the thread, the nice thing is you can always take a Sharpie marker and go over that, but most of the time you don't see the thread. And then I will continue to add 2 more and go all the way around. Now I've got all my black beads on. I'm just tying a couple knots off on the back here. Now I'm taking a tiny scissor and very carefully cutting around this. You want to make sure that you're right up against the beads, but you're also not right up against the thread. And if you're too close, you will be resewing all of this because it will fall apart. I have a piece of ultra suede fabric here. I'm going to take some E6000 and just glue it in the back, and just in the center here is the only place you need your glue. And I tried to get mine as close as I can to the edges because I don't like to waste ultra suede. And now I'm just going to trim around those edges. And this way the ultra suede will cover all of my stitches and give me a beautiful finished backing. I want to outline this with black beads, and I'm going to continue using my orange line just because you won't be able to see it if I use the black thread and the black beads and the black background. Now I'm going to go through, make my locking stitch, and come back. I will take 1 bead at a time, and I will go through both layers of fabric. I will then go back up through the bottom of the bead and come up through the top. And that will make these beads lay perfectly over this edging and fill this in. And after I add a few, you'll be able to see a little better. I have my bead on. I'm just going through both layers of fabric, pulling up my thread and going through the top of that bead. And I will come back after I do a few beads on here so you can see what a beautiful edging I'll get. And here you can see the orange thread on the edge. Once I dye that, you won't see that at all, but I want you to see how it finishes it off with this beautiful beadwork, nice and clean. It's a very contemporary piece, so I want to keep it very simple and clean. And I'm just going to continue adding my beads all around and come back at the bottom here. Now when you get to the end, just go through that first bead that you put in and come back up. A seamless match that will pull these beads together, and you can't even tell where I start or where I ended. Now I want to attach this little teardrop, and the most interesting way I think I can do it is with a crystal right up on top of it. Now I'm using size 15 seed beads, and I have to be careful that the top point of this does not rub against and go sideways there. It has to hang freely and a little bit lower than this crystal. So be very careful when you're attaching a teardrop like this. Make sure you don't butt it up right against it, because it may just stick really tight, pop up, move, and not have that nice free flow that you want it to have. So add a few extra little beads there, and that will give it that movement that it needs. So I'm going to add 7 size 15 seed beads, and I'm going to add 7 to the opposite side. My beads do not land in the center here. I don't have 1 bead. I have, the center is between the 2 beads. So I'm going to go up through both of those beads so that I have a nice even fit, that this crystal doesn't go one side or the other. And once I pull this, hopefully everything will work out. Perfect. And now you can see that this piece moves freely back and forth. You want to, like I said, make sure that this does not, otherwise it will pop up like that. It will go to one side like this. It won't have that movement that you want with the body. I'm going up through this edge. You can see that there's almost no stitch there once I come through. And now to add a bail at the top here. You can either start beading off the sides like I did on my other pieces, but this one, for some reason, I want to put an interesting bail. I'm actually going to do a herringbone stitch, and I am going to come out these 2 beads here, go down, I'm adding 2 beads, and that will create that little peak. Now I'm going to come up through the other side, add 2 more, go down. Now I'm going to go back up. I'm going to take leave a little dot there so that I can come back up. Go through the black bead and the red bead. And I'm going to add 2 more beads, go up through that second bead, and then back up through the middle bead. So I'm going up through the 2 middle beads, down and up. Now I've added my 2 beads, and I'm going to go down through this red one. You don't have to go through the black, just the red one. I'm only going down 1 bead every time. And you see how they'll stand nicely on top of each other? Now we're going to go across to the other 2 beads and go up through that outer bead. And you'll start to see that they form this nice little pattern. Now I'm going down through the second bead, up through the third, and just repeating this back and forth. Adding 2 beads. I'll do it a few more times to make it long enough to make a bail out of it. I just really wanted to add this little red striking strip here. I want it to add a little bit of a design element, not just simply beads. So you can always do any type of a design element by adding beads, changing colors. You don't have to follow my patterns or designs. I'm just giving you ideas. Now I've finished this end here, and it's just enough that I can fold it over and create a perfect little bail that's just a nice little accent. And how would I do that? I'm going to go across as if I'm going to add more beads. So I'm coming out that last bead. I'm going to come up through that first bead I went in, so it attaches. I'm going to go down through the next black bead, come out of that, and I'm just going to go up and down through these beads till I get them all attached. The herringbone almost has a basket weave kind of a look to it, the way that the beads line up. So it has an interesting texture. You can see my bail is perfect from the back and the front, and it just adds a little something to it. With contemporary pieces, it's more about blocks of color than little spots of color. And so that's why I have color blocking here. And then this at a distance almost has a peachy red look to it. And so it becomes, once again, a little framed colored block to complement it. Now, on the back here, I apparently had a little accident with the thread that it knotted up and didn't go all the way through. Sometimes I'm watching the camera monitor and I miss things. There is a way to fix that. And I want to show you so that if this ever happens to you, you don't have this horrible panic. Do not cut that thread under any circumstances. That thread is not knotted on the other side. It will start to unravel and pull your piece apart. So what you want to do is go through over to it. And now I'm going to make a knot, just a slip knot. I'm going to go through it and go through my thread and create a little knot at the end of it. And I'm just going to pull it down. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to pull it down, and I'm going to continue knotting off. And even though it's a big blob of thread, it's nice and flush now. It's not sticking up. It won't get caught. And once I dye it with a little Sharpie marker, you won't see it at all. So I'm going to just start to tie some knots, go through, and then I will cut off my thread. Before I assemble a necklace, I'm going to take my black Sharpie marker. Like I told you, I can hide all of this orange. All I have to do is just brush it over. And this is the side that had the big knot on it. And there you can see the difference of how seamless this looks versus here where I haven't done yet, and on the side and on the back. It just disappears. I'm going to use this lentil bead that I have a hole in the center as my clasp, and I'm starting out with a new piece of thread, and I have not cut it off the spool. The reason I don't cut it off the spool is if I need extra, then I don't have to tie on. It's stronger to have one solid piece. Now I'm going to start out by adding 6 of my size 11 seed beads just at the end here. I'm going to go through my lentil bead, and I want to add a red one just because I can. I think I like the way that contrasts with the centerpiece here, and I'm going to go back down through my lentil. I'm not going back through the red bead or it won't be my stopper bead, and I'm going to add 6 more of my seed beads. Here I'm just tying a basic knot under over just to keep everything in place. And now I'm just going to add, I have some size 8 crystals, and these are about 10 millimeter polymer clay beads that I've created, and I'm just going to randomly make a mix here. And now I'm just going to continue adding some beads. I'm at the end, and I've just got to put a clasp in, and to make my clasp I am just using size 11 seed beads in a loop, and the loop basically just has to slide this through like a button. And perfect. That slides through real nice and easy, not too loose that it'll just come right out. Let's see, and remember now the weight is on the center, so it will pull that down, so this won't open up that easy, but you want to make sure it's a little bit snug. Now I'm just going to go back around and through to this end of the necklace so that we can reinforce it all. Now I'm back at the beginning, and I'm just going to go up through this and reinforce it. This thread will definitely not be long enough to go through to this other side of the necklace and give it one more reinforcement. So I am going to just tie this off so I can start with the other end of the thread. Now let me just thread the needle and we'll start at the other end. So I'm back, and I am just going to go back through this necklace and get to this clasp end. Now as I come up to the clasp, I'm going to go around it twice. So I'm basically just going through all of these seed beads twice so that I reinforce things here. And this will just reinforce your clasp so that it has much more durability. This will get the most tension of the necklace, and so you want to make sure it's the most reinforced part. Going through the first bead, I'm adding 3 beads, and these are the size of a poppy seed. They're very tiny. And then I'm going through, skipping a bead and going through the next bead. And that will create this little picot, which is like a little triangle of beads, as you can see there. And I will continue this all around the loop. So I've gone through the first peak and connected it to the second peak with 3 little 15s. You can see the 3 right there. And I'm just going to connect peak to peak with 3 size 15 seed beads. So there's 3 there, and just connect it, and I will continue going around. And you will see this starts to get almost like a lacy edge, but this reinforces it actually. It keeps it open so it's a little easier to put on, and it really looks much more finished. And here you can see the difference where one side is completely finished and the other side needs to be finished, and how it beautifully reinforces it. It makes it look so much more finished and stronger. So I will finish this up, knot this off, and show you the finished piece. And here is that purple stone done in a longer pendant necklace. And here's the close-up version of the finished necklace. I wanted you to see how beautiful his stone is. It almost looks like a seashell with the purples and the whites in it. I really love this stone. And you can see how it really stacks up next to the natural pearls. I think that's what makes me feel like it's a seashell. And then I've got a rhinestone pod and some polymer clay beads at the top here. And here's the close-up version of the finished necklace. And let me give you a little bit better close-up of that pendant piece and how special it is. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoy watching Yupo's videos. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.